Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
Welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast, your go-to resource for hidden growth opportunities throughout online business. We're your host. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Brandon, and thanks for joining us for our latest episode. Today, we will be speaking with Don Hennig, founding partner of Accrueme, a service that provides Amazon funding to help Amazon sellers grow quickly and increase profits. Don explains how he went from working in the mortgage and real estate industry to helping Amazon FBA sellers reach new heights through a less risky means of obtaining financial backing for their business outside of traditional funding, which often includes many hidden fees and costs most sellers are unaware of. Don and his team have been helping FBA sellers scale and grow their brands with a motto of the business only wins if the seller is winning, stepping outside of the typical monthly payment structure that most funding companies require, and work with sellers to get the funding they need without being held accountable for monthly payments when their business might have peaks and valleys in profits, as is most common in this industry when selling on Amazon.
That's right, Brandon, but we won't give away too much just yet, so let's dig into the interview and see what Don has to share. And at the end of the episode, we'll go over some common questions online business owners face and what you can learn from them. So let's get started. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast. We are so excited to have Don Hennig on today from Accrueme.com. So thank you, Don, for joining us. Just wondering where you're calling in from in the world right now.
Well, my pleasure, first off, Sarah. And I'm calling in from New York, from Long Island, New York.
Long Island.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You guys just went through like a heat wave or something crazy, right?
Yeah, since
We
hot.
did. It was really stupid hot. And not just hot. Like I went from Vegas last week where it was 113. That's crazy hot. And I come home and it's 87, but with the humidity, it was just absolutely brutal. It was crazy. But luckily, my wife and I and our kids and friends, we boat. So we were out in the water and out in the ocean and, swimming and just cooling off any which way you can. But today it's absolutely beautiful.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I'm glad you guys have gotten out of it because, being in a city, let's say New York City, for example, when it's super hot, it's not fun times.
I agree.
Yeah. I remember we were talking offline and it sounds like you've got a nice little access to water and good things going in Long Island. So that's good.
Yeah, we love it.
Awesome. Well, so for those who don't know you so well, let's talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey and what it looks like today. I know that's a big question, but let's start there.
All right. Well, my journey is a longer journey and an interesting journey in some respects. But, I started very young. I'll just give you a quick synopsis here. I literally started as a paper boy delivering papers on Long Island and didn't just accept it, whatever route I had. I went out and I sold the papers and I built the route to the largest on Long Island. So I was literally the number one salesperson for the local New York press on Long Island, which was exciting. I was 11 years old, had more money than I knew what to do with. Every day before school, I would buy everybody Yoo-Hoos and bagels. And it started then.
True hero.
It is what it is. I am one of those people that share in a big, big way. But then I started a financial planning company and built that. There was a mortgage refi boom that was happening. So I started a mortgage company and built that to one of the top, 2 or 3 in New York State. And I sold that. Then I built a mortgage broker franchise, never been done before. People didn't understand what it was or what it would do. A year later, I was able to merge it into another company and then sell the combined company, which was great. And then I took some time off. I did a publishing company because my kids were young and I thought, what do I enjoy doing? I love being out in the fields, the soccer fields, the lacrosse fields. So I started a soccer publication, very quickly became the official newspaper for New York State soccer, 176,000 copies every month, full, print newspaper. before the internet, and distributed it all myself, did everything myself, made a great profit from month one, never lost, always did great. And I sold that, got back into the technology world. My partner in the technology world is now, he and I are building a company in Vietnam, and that's where he's now located, which is exciting. Got back into the mortgage business, built the sixth largest wholesale origination firm in the nation, doing $50 billion a year in business and earning over $300 million net profit after taxes. Built the fifth largest direct-to-consumer mortgage company in the nation. Our closest competitor was what people know now as Rocket Mortgage. We were huge and very, very profitable. That ended, and I, got into foreclosures. I bought and sold 300 houses in 18 months, all for a profit. Built a couple other companies. Along the way, I started an entertainment company just for the hell of it, and myself and a partner. And we built the entertainment company. We did 8 feature-length films with the biggest name stars from Tom Cruise and Mark Ruffalo and Natalie Portman, on and on and on. And we created and produced the Broadway show Rock of Ages, which was, I think we ended as the 26th or 27th longest running play of all time. Anyway, so to finish up this story, I took, for the third time, I took time off. And this time it was 5 years. And I actually thought I was done. I thought I was retired. And I was loving life and playing golf and boating and learning and just doing lots of great things, traveling all over the world. And then I ran into an old friend of mine from the mortgage industry from 20 years before. And we had lunch. And the next thing you know, he's pitching me on all these different businesses. And I kept telling him, I have no interest. Until one day when he brought up Amazon and Amazon sellers. And I knew nothing about it. And when he told me about that there are millions of Amazon sellers out there, at the time I thought everything came from Amazon. So I love the idea that all these, small entrepreneurs, young people primarily, but not always, are starting these businesses with this great opportunity in front of them. And if I could help them grow their business and, make it more profitable for them, I love doing that. So that caught my attention, and that led me down the path to Amazon.
Yeah, that's quite the track record, Don. And hearing, that's an amazing track record to have, especially with so many different industries and so many avenues that you went down, and obviously succeeded really great at. I'm curious, where was it that you saw that initial opportunity to pivot into Amazon, going from having maybe more of a mortgage and real estate background? Where was that opportunity that you had seen lie within Amazon's ecosystem that you saw? Okay, this is where I'm going to make my next move.
What I've done my whole career is I just try to help people. I really don't think about anything else. I just try to help people. And if I can help them get whatever they want, then, somehow, and believe me, I don't even know how it happens, but somehow it always works out. That's all I try to do. So when I heard about all of these sellers, the picture in my mind, and as it's probably silly now looking back, but the picture in my mind was to stand up on a stage and talk to people about opening their own business, which I believe in firmly, and help them get there. And that's where my head was at. But then what I did, because I knew nothing about selling, about Amazon sellers. And so what I did was I called my accountants, and it's a large accounting firm in New York. And I asked them if they had any Amazon sellers. And they said yes. And they sent me 3 names and contact information. I reached out to the 3. Just turns out, by chance, one was very small, one was a reasonable size, and one was very large. And I didn't even understand the language. I didn't know what FBA stood for. I didn't know anything. And I was calling really to learn. So I would ask them questions. And in each case, at the end, I asked them, what do you need? Each one of them had the exact same answer. We need capital. The sources of capital in this industry are horrendous. You can't grow without getting more money. And I'm like, oh, interesting. So that's right in my wheelhouse. So we did the research, and I did the research on the lenders that are in the industry. What's access to the capital do Amazon sellers have? And I started running spreadsheets. But I saw right off the bat that the marketing for these lenders was really, really good. I'll never forget the first ad I saw. It said, borrow 10,000, pay back 11. It's that simple. I'm like, how could I ever compete with that? That's great. Well, then you look into the details and it's a 6-month loan paid back every 2 weeks. I didn't know at the time that Amazon pays the Amazon sellers every 2 weeks. So you're paying off your gross revenue every 2 weeks for 6 months. And when I ran the numbers, I found that a seller would have to earn a 19% return per month just to break even. So literally on that $10,000, the monthly payment was $1,856. So on that $10,000, you would have to earn $1,900 or 19% just to break even. It makes no sense. And people go into it all the time. It's a big, big offering here these days. They go into it all the time and they don't realize that they can't make money. So I felt terrible with that. And I said to my partner, I don't want anything to do with this. I can't compete with this. It's just not right. And he said to me, well, why don't we partner with the sellers? I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, I don't know. Let's talk about it. So we brainstormed something that has never been done before. And what we'll do is we'll invest in that Amazon seller. So we'll give them that $10,000 in that example, except we don't charge any interest. And we don't require them to make monthly payments. They pay us when it's right for the business. And I can get into that. It really works out in their advantage in a big way. There's no personal guarantees. There's no lien against the business. And there's no term. They keep us as long as they want us. Sometimes we're in for 3 months and they say, hey, we've really grown in these 3 months. We're flush with cash. Here's your money back. Thank you very much. Other times we have sellers that are with us, for, a couple of years now, because that's only as old as we are. But we have many sellers that haven't made a payment in 18 months. And they're just using the money to grow, which is fantastic. Sounds crazy, but we'll get into more details, I'm sure, as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of insane that these companies they're kind of putting that bait out there for sellers, and they're saying, look, we'll give you all of this money, you only pay us this short percentage back. But when you crunch the numbers, really what they think is going to help their ship, stay afloat, it's really that hole that's sinking them, right? And then before they know it, they're already tied up in the contract, and then they're over their head. So
they don't know that there are fees. There's another one that we only charge half of 1%. But when I found an engineer who took one of the loans, and I said, did you ever run the numbers? He goes, yeah. I said, what were you actually paying? He said, I was paying over 50%.
Wow.
I said, you're kidding. On something that's advertised as half of 1%. I'm like, oh, man. He goes, yeah. And he goes, I should have figured it out because this guy's an engineer. He knows how to do it. But you kind of get excited. Somebody's offering you a loan.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, on that subject, you've been doing this for a couple of years now, and you've been in the mortgage industry for a long time now. What would you say were some of the traditional funding options for FBA businesses, let's say maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago that were created in this industry? And maybe, what were some of the funding challenges of early FBA sellers looking to locate this capital?
Well, the biggest challenge I see is that most sellers don't know what's available. And when they find anything that's available, they'll jump at it. And that's a big mistake, just like with the example I just gave you. Also, sellers outside the United States, most sellers are selling inside the United States, no matter where they're located. And they have no sources of capital, literally zero. So the sources of capital for Amazon sellers a few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, you had just a couple. You had a factoring company, which is still probably the largest lender in this industry. And if you know anything about factoring, it's something that typically is done at very high rates for very short periods of time, where what you're actually doing is selling your receivable. So you actually sell your receivable from Amazon every 2 weeks, and they give you some percentage of that. And they keep the rest and they hold it back, and you can't figure out what you're paying. It's really, really, really difficult. It's not something that any legitimate business would do, put it that way. Although in the garment industry, that's where factoring is. Factoring has always been done in the garment industry. But outside of that, it's dangerous. Besides that, then you had Amazon, open up their lending. And truthfully, we've run the numbers on all of these companies. And from a growth standpoint, there's no question that sellers can grow faster and bigger with us than anything else. But Amazon, surprisingly, actually, came in second. So I have nothing negative to say about the Amazon lending program. It could be a high interest rate, it could be whatever, but it's still second best to us, which I give them a lot of credit. They could have done it a lot worse. And now you have other lenders that have come into the industry, but not like your typical bank loans. They're more merchant lending advances. So what's happening, and again, is really not good for growth, because what they charge, and I don't care what the interest rate is, but what they charge is off of your gross revenue. So typically what a lot of these companies are doing these days is they'll take 30% of your gross revenue every time Amazon pays you, so every 2 weeks. So the way Amazon works is that Amazon sellers, when they're pricing their products and figuring out, is this a good product for me to sell, they look at it basically as 300%. And let me explain what I mean. If they can buy the product for $10 and they can sell it for $30, then it's a winnable situation. And what happens is you're selling it for $30, Amazon takes a third, the cost of the product is a third, and then you're keeping a third. But what happens if you go to a lender who wants basically 30% of your gross revenue every time you get paid? There's no third for you. You're paying the lender, you're paying all the Amazon fees, you're paying for the product, and there's nothing left. Doesn't make sense. So I'll tell you, I was just looking today on Seller Central, which is where all the Amazon sellers, they all have their own Seller Central account with Amazon. And they vote on, the best funding sources. And we are number one. We have the highest rating and the most reviews. The other guys, they don't want anybody to review them because the reviews are all bad. And people don't know that they're bad until they've been in it for a while. Initially, it feels good. Somebody gave me money. I'm going to grow my business. And then, 6 months later, you realize, oh my God, I'm in a deeper hole than I was when I started. And that's truthfully what happens. And we see it all the time. It's sad.
Yeah, it's interesting. Funding, I think, in any space is a difficult place to be in if you are trying to give funding that's actually in the interest of the people being funded. So I think it's interesting, what you've been able to do where you're creating a funding model that actually works for them and works for you. So can we talk about that? What is a structure that you created with Accrueme that, made funding actually beneficial for sellers and worked for you as a team?
Sure. So, I'm a big believer in win-win. And, not a BS win-win, but a real win-win. And so the way we set it up is that the sellers, if they do well, we do well. If they do poorly, we do poorly. No lender in the world would do something like that. So I'll give you an example, and I'm going to give you the details in a minute. But last year when COVID hit, if you remember, Amazon prevented sellers from sending in all their products. You could only send in the products that were good for COVID, gloves and sanitizer and things like that. Everything else they didn't want in their warehouses. So these sellers went from making a lot of money one month to literally the next month not making any money and then losing money. And, like this one guy, he had taken $100,000 from us, and he called me after the first month. Now he's losing money the second month. And he said, Don, what's going on here? What do I have to do? I said, what do you mean? He goes, I'm not making any money. I'm not making any payments. I don't know how you guys are going to look at this. And I said, this has nothing to do with you. This has to do with Amazon. It's outside your control. We're your partner in this. We want to see you succeed. And, we don't want you to make payments when it's not right for you. And he said to me, this is literally, he said, because he came out of an Amazon loan, a $100,000 Amazon loan to do the deal with us. And he said, man, if I still had to make payments to Amazon, I would literally be out of business. And he would have had to shut his business. No way he could afford that. It was roughly a $10,000 a month payment. So here's what we did. We looked at it. We said, let's invest instead of lend, which not that big of a difference really from a seller standpoint. It's just that we're, instead of, having something over their head where they have to make monthly payments and interest and all that, we're giving them the money to grow their business. We're trusting them to grow their business. And they pay us a percentage of the profits. And here's the way it works. Whatever percentage of the capital we give them, so let's say they have $100,000 and we give them $100,000. All right. And by capital, I mean their inventory at cost, plus their Amazon receivable, plus cash in the bank. If that all added up to 100,000, we'd give them 100,000 or less, whatever they want. And so in that situation, we represent 50%, 50% of the capital in the business, which is the most we'll go. We don't want to own more than the business, more than they do. They remain 100% equity owner of the business. They own all the equity. We are what's called a profit member partner. That's it. So, or profit share member. And we're only entitled to a share of the profits. So if we represent 50% of the capital, and most people would think you would want 50% of the profit, if we did that, the seller would get literally no benefit. And I know we could sell that, but the seller would get no benefit. So what we did was whatever percentage of the capital we are, cut it in half. So if we're giving them 50% of the capital in the business, so they have 100, we give them 100, we get 25% of the profit for that month. And it adjusts every month. We keep track of it. If we give them 10%, so they have 90,000, we give them 10,000. So now we're 10% of the overall business. We get 5% of the profit. So let me give you an analogy, if you will, of how it works. Let's say they had $100,000. They would literally keep all the profit on that $100,000. And then the $100,000 that we give them, they would get 50% of the profit. We would get 50% of the profit. So that works out to 75 to them and 25 to us in a nutshell. So they can't lose. It's impossible for them to lose with our deal. If they don't earn money, we don't earn money. They don't have to make monthly payments. They make it when it's right for their business. If they're going into Q3 and Q4 and they see all these opportunities in front of them to make a lot of money, they should use every penny and reinvest into the business. And that's what I would want to do, and grow their business when they have that opportunity in front of them. And then let's say it's, March or April and they're a little slow and they're flush with cash. That's when they should make payments, when it's right for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sound crazy?
No, it makes total sense, actually.
Right? It does.
A lot of things do these days, but yeah.
we were blown away. So it really makes total sense. So when we did this, I remember one night I came home and I said to my wife, because again, remember, I was out for 5 years. I said, I'm going up to my office. I'm going into Excel spreadsheet hell. And because I haven't been using it that much in these last 5 years. So I went up and I built the model and I said, wow, this is really good. And then I built the model from the seller standpoint. I said, holy cow, this is the best thing that ever happened to a seller. And we have the numbers now. We could see it. The sellers are growing like wildfire. We have sellers that literally, I swear it's crazy, that over a year and a half grow over 1,000%. It's mind-boggling. And they never could have done it on their own. And they tell us that all the time. We never could have done this. And it's life-changing. So anyway, yeah, that's what we do. Again, no personal guarantee. It's a business deal. And we're here to help them. We have a bunch of Amazon specialists on our team that will help them with specific Amazon things. My partner is a Wharton grad and a lawyer. As you know, I've opened and bought and built many companies, and, we're here to help. And we've helped them with, guiding them through different things. We've helped them with specific Amazon and product related things. And that's the better they do, the better we do. It's just that simple.
Absolutely. I mean, it's great that you take this, a partnership approach to something that probably in many instances, lending doesn't feel like a partnership. That's a completely, that on itself is sort of putting things on its head. I wanted to ask you something because you started talking about COVID, and that got me really curious about what navigating that was like for you guys. Because my best guess is that world went crazy. Amazon went haywire, everything became really limited. And then a lot of the people that you were limited or lending to were probably, they're a little bit bootstrapped for a while. They're not really sure what's going to happen. And then that flips on its head to, oh my gosh, I'm scaling so fast. I'm growing so fast. I can't keep up with demand. I needed money like yesterday. So you kind of, what I imagine, you probably went from one end of the spectrum to the other. I mean, what was that like for you and having to help sellers through such an incredibly difficult and unpredictable time period, not just for them, but for you as well?
Yeah. And we didn't know, a lot yet. We knew some things, but we were able to help so many sellers get through that year and be growing the whole time. It's heartwarming. I'll give you one quick story. So, because I love it, our very first client. And so it's an older couple and they were retired and they lost their retirement. So imagine I'm going to guess that they're roughly around 70 years old and they lost their retirement. So they had a business, they sold the business. The new owner, they had a building as well with it. And the new owner of the business that bought their business ran it into the ground without them knowing and mortgaged their building to the hilt. So there was nothing left. Literally, one day they're retired and happy and they have money and everything is good. And the next day they have nothing. So they started an Amazon business. In their first year, they did okay. I think they did like $90,000 of revenue and $9,000 of profit. Then they came to us and they didn't have a lot of money. They had maybe $25,000 and we gave them another $20,000 or $25,000. And for the next 9 months, they increased their revenue from the $90,000 to roughly $450,000, and their profits from $9,000 net of us, just their profits from $9,000 to over $40,000. Great 9 months. The next, year with us, they increased to over roughly $800,000 of revenue and $125,000 of profit. And that's what they needed to live. So they were golden. But here's the best part. When we look back, for 18 months, they took out $115,000 to live. And you know how much they paid us? $0. They didn't make a single payment to us. We never asked them for one. They used all the money to grow their business exactly the way that they should. And then in the 19th month, they're flush with cash. They sent us $2,000. Then they sent us $3,000, then $5,000, then $10,000. And they paid us way down, but we're still in the game with them. For whatever reason, they haven't paid us off. They have the money to do it. But in my mind, I think they're doing one of two things. Either one, they're leaving us in with them for a little longer, just basically to say thank you. Because we always kidded them, because they wanted to know what happens at the end. I said, you're going to pay us off and you'll probably give us a box of cookies to say thank you. And I think that's really where it's going. Yeah. But the other thing that it could be, and I haven't asked them, and they're great people, and I should, but the other thing that I'm thinking that it could be is that they're thinking Q3 and Q4 are coming up and they want to have us as their backstop. If they have, many more opportunities, they want to take advantage of them. And although they're doing well on their own, they might want to go from, $800,000 of revenue to $1.5 million or $2 million and start gearing up to sell the business in a year or two. So, but that's our very first client. And we have dozens of those types of case studies of intense growth. And the interesting thing, when I looked at it all, almost every one of them had months where they either broke even or lost money. And it's very interesting to see, and I wouldn't have expected it. But in this Amazon world, there are good months and there are not so good months. And there are months when Amazon takes a lot of, hits you with a lot of other fees that you didn't expect, returns and things like that. And all of a sudden, last month you had a good month, and now this month you're losing money. Not having to make a payment is like probably the best thing in the world at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting to hear that you have this broad spectrum of Amazon FBA sellers that you guys are, helping them to scale their businesses and get that capital that they need to reach that next stage in their business journey. And, that kind of leads me into a thought that I had on, what is the typical roadmap or maybe even strategy that these FBA sellers are doing to their businesses once they get that capital from you? Are they going and investing it straight into inventory and just, completely getting, maybe 6-7 months of inventory in stock? That way they don't stock out if that was the issue that they had at the beginning? Or are they rolling this capital into doing more Amazon PPC advertising? Yeah, just curious what your take is from your experience and what is the typical roadmap that these sellers are utilizing this capital into their business model?
Great question. Very interesting. So you might find fascinating is that, there are different models within the Amazon seller world. So, I think most people would think of private label as being the model. where you're coming up with whatever product it is, you come up with a way to make it a little bit better. You go to China, you get it manufactured, you have it shipped, you go through that whole process, you confirm that it's good product, and now you start buying more of it, more of it, more of it, and putting a lot of PPC behind it and build that product and get its ranking up. But then you also have wholesale, and wholesale is very, very large as well. And wholesale sellers are going out to name brand companies and buying direct or through a supplier. So, give you an example, like buying Gillette razors and selling them and, or whatever else, anything else that you can think of, you can buy typically either directly from that manufacturer or through a supplier at a discount. It might be Adidas shoes or, shirts or things like that. And you're going to make a great profit on it, but your turnaround time is going to be next to nothing. You're going to put an order in and it's going to be at Amazon in 2 weeks. Where if you put a private label order in, it might be 60 to 90 days before it gets to Amazon and you start selling it. And then you have a third one that's very interesting that most people say don't go near. And that's retail arbitrage, where you're going out to stores like, TJ Maxx and Marshalls and, Home Depot, and you're finding really good name brand products on sale that you're able to buy, ship to Amazon, prove that you bought them from a TJ Maxx or a Home Depot or whatever, and keep that profit. So it takes a little bit of work and it's hard to scale, but we literally have sellers that have done that and have gone from $1,000 a month in profit to $15,000 a month in profit in 9 months. So think about how that is life-changing for somebody. I mean, life-changing. We have wholesale. So the first people I had mentioned to you, their business was wholesale. And, you heard those numbers. They're fantastic. And then we have plenty of private label sellers who have done the same exact thing. However, with private label, typically it's a little bit more risky. You can do better and you're going to have a better valuation when you go to sell. But if your product has a problem with it, your manufacturer has some defective piece in that product, whatever it might be, you're going to get returns. You're going to get into trouble. You might get suspended. There's a lot of work and a lot of knowledge that has to go into private label. And we love private label, but you have to know a little bit more than, the others. So I normally suggest to people, start small, start with wholesale typically, and then move, start learning about private label, go to a couple conferences, get your knowledge way up there, and then start picking your products and go out and pick 1 or 2 products. And the other thing that I suggest to a lot of people today is not to get your product manufactured in China, simply because the supply chain is so broken. It takes forever and it costs too much. We've been sending people down to Mexico to get products manufactured. And, they get manufactured at basically the same price, same cost, and they're shipped over the border and they're again here in 2 weeks. It's not months. What that does for your business is you won't stock out. If you needed to get more, you could get it tomorrow. Literally, it's that quick. So, not all the manufacturing in Mexico is up to par. So it takes time to get the right ones. But if I was an Amazon seller, I would be focusing on finding my manufacturers in Mexico and making that relationship in a big way and, securing my business. When things blow up and nobody's able to get their products in and you're the one that can, I think you're going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, sourcing, other means to getting your products. And if it's a cheaper route or a cheaper option and it's a quicker option, then why not try that out and see if it works with your business model? And then you might discover something that you never knew. And it's funny that you mentioned conferences. I know we were just in Las Vegas last week and, speaking to a lot of people at the business conference that Prosper. And I noticed at the conference as well, there's a lot more lending companies that are coming out, especially with how popular now, I guess, the term SBA is becoming. And a lot of sellers are starting to look at this as maybe an opportunity. But as we know, there's probably those hidden fees and a lot of those other things that we mentioned at the beginning of the call that they're not aware of. So why don't you walk us through, what are some of the options that these Amazon FBA sellers have now for raising funding? And, what do you think is your take on what those options offer and why they might be good or bad, depending on, where it is that the seller is looking to go?
Anybody that is able to get an SBA loan, I would suggest getting an SBA loan because SBA is government backed. You're typically going to get a good amount. The underwriting is not as strict as a typical bank, and the interest rate is very low. So if you're able to get it, I would get it. That would be a no-brainer in my mind. I would be very careful with factors, and I would be very careful with anybody that's causing you to pay a percentage of your gross revenue. It's just dangerous. You can't win. But besides that, you have credit cards, which again, I'm not a fan of. I use credit cards, but I use credit cards to go out to dinner and to buy stuff on Amazon, not to fund my business. I think it's dangerous because things do go wrong. And, when things go wrong and you're liable personally on these credit cards, it's not a fun world. It's terrible. It's a horrible situation, especially when you have to explain to your spouse and your children that, no, we can't do that vacation, or no, we can't buy that right now, or no, we have to move because I blew up the credit card so badly and made one mistake and lost all this money. I wouldn't do that. The other thing to do is family and friends. So you think about our model, it can apply to family and friends as well. I actually termed it at one point in time the rich uncle program. It's like, you go to your rich uncle, right? And you say, hey, I've got this great business. I'm making a good profit. I need money to keep growing it. And I want to borrow $100,000. Okay, I'll give you that 100,000 or 10,000 or whatever the number is. But I don't want to pay you any interest. And you see the uncle, get a little squirrely now. And I don't want you to own any percentage of my business. Now the uncle is, twitching in his chair. And by the way, I don't want to make any payments unless it's right for me and my business, which may happen a few times a year, or may not. And now the uncle's like sweating. I didn't want to turn you down, but I think I have to. This is a terrible deal. And, okay, I'll just go to Accrueme, because that's the deal. But, truthfully, family and friends can contribute in. You might need, especially smaller sellers, they might need $5,000 or $10,000. That would make a big difference to them. And to go to their family and friends and say, hey, look, give me $10,000 and I'll give you 10% on your money over a period of time and over a year. And, you should be able to make so much money on that $10,000 that paying the 10% is nothing. That's like 1 month's pay of revenue off of that. And then everything else is gold. So I would definitely talk to friends and family if you're comfortable with it. Those are the ones.
Awesome. I'm curious. I don't know if you know this, or it might be too impossible to really know, but worth asking. What would you say is typically the percentage of Amazon sellers that have to secure outside funding? And, if you happen to know a number for that, do you think that percentage is going to be forced to grow in the future?
Great question. So it's interesting. So there are many sellers that don't realize they need money to grow. They're afraid, they've never built a business before, and it's understandable, and they're going slow and they're taking it easy. But the right answer is that when you build a business and you have a model that is profitable, you should get capital and grow the hell out of that business. If you're losing money or if you're breaking even, don't get capital. You don't have a good model. But if you have a model that's making good profit, then, don't do it with 10,000, do it with 20,000, do it with 100,000. Really make a difference. And in business, when you have that opportunity to grow, you got to go, pedal to the floor. You got to go for it. When you mentioned I don't remember exactly how you worded it, but, going forward, if you think about it, what's going on in this industry? We have all of these aggregators that are buying Amazon sellers. So where's the industry going to be in 3 or 4 years when these aggregators are so large And there are so many fewer sellers as a result. But the sellers are these aggregators who control, let's say, each one, let's just say, has $1 billion in sales. They'll probably have more than that. Aren't they going to crowd you out? If I'm an aggregator and I'm doing $1 billion in sales a year, which is not unreasonable, won't I have my products in every market in the world? I will. Won't I have all the technology that anybody could ever build to run my business? I will. Won't I have the top experts in the industry working for me, not as consultants, but in my business? I will. Won't I have all the money in the world to advertise it? I will. Won't I have the relationships with the manufacturers and suppliers to get it at a cheaper cost? So instead of buying, $50,000 of something, I'm buying $500,000 or $1 million of something. I'm going to get it cheaper than you. So on every product I'm going to sell versus you, if we sell at the same price, I'm going to make much more money. Or I might decide to put you out and just cut my prices. And you have nothing to stand on. And that's what goes on in the internet, as we know. Look at Amazon. If I did that, cut my prices so that you lose, eventually, not long, you'll be out of business and I'll be able to raise my prices even higher than they were before. And that's reality. So in my mind, sellers today have a big opportunity to grow their business and to sell it, within a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then long term, I'm a little concerned about what the prospects are for sellers in this Amazon world due to the aggregators and the size that they're going to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we do want to hit on that future piece and the aggregators in 1 minute. I think you kind of answered this in some way, but I did want to ask, the way that you painted Amazon, and I think the Amazon that we all know of, Amazon is tumultuous. It's been crazy, most certainly in the past couple of years, and we can't really call what's going to happen in the future. And really staying ahead is tough for sellers. And so, I was wondering, do you think that the right funding opportunities help circumvent the challenges of being an everyday seller on Amazon? So, whether that's having the right funding allows you to create a little bit of protection against changing Amazon policies, or just the thickness of the competition. I don't know, in what ways does it make being an everyday Amazon seller just a little bit better or safer, I suppose?
It's a good question. I'll tell you that I think by having the right capital, first off, having the right capital, we all know how, as you put it, tumultuous Amazon is. They can suspend you tomorrow because they think you did something wrong. And you have to fight like a dog to, get reinstated. It's scary as an Amazon seller just for those reasons. And we've had sellers that have been, suspended for ridiculous reasons. Like one guy, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but he worked for another Amazon seller like 2 or 3 years before. And so they had his name or his email or whatever associated with this other account, and they shut him down for having multiple accounts. He didn't. So we helped him get reinstated, and luckily it didn't take long, but it's scary. So in my mind, the only way, and this is just from a business standpoint, and again, I've built many businesses and sold them, and it's almost always been the same situation that I try to get as big as I can and as profitable as I can, as fast as I can, because the longer I'm sticking around, the more likelihood that something stupid is going to happen. And with Amazon, that can happen any minute, any day. So this is me personally, and this is what I've done in my career, I would get the capital, I would build, grow my business, and then I would have the option to sell. And I most likely would sell. And then I don't have that risk anymore. So I take that money off the table, and I know the business. I know how to grow. I know the products that I didn't start yet. So tomorrow I'm starting a new Amazon business with a new product, something completely different. And I'm going to build it and grow it and grow it and grow it. But I'm going to have a war chest of $1 million or $2 million or $3 million or $6 million in the bank. So I don't have to worry so much. If this product doesn't work so well, my life is not going to be changed by that. So get as much money off the table when you can, in my opinion.
And I actually want to piggyback off of that thought, Don. So it kind of leads me into the next question that I had for you. And it's something I'm sure maybe many Amazon FBA sellers maybe struggle with on a daily basis. They're not quite sure which route to go. But what advice would you give to sellers who might be on the fence on whether they should choose to find more funding and continue to grow their business, or to plan on maybe just making an exit, taking those chips off the table and running it into another passion project, as you had mentioned? Is there a scenario where you've come across someone that said, look, I want to fund, but I also want to exit? What would you suggest in that typical scenario if they came to you with that?
Yeah, I've talked to many people on that. And the basic advice, and I think all the aggregators would agree with me as well, and all the brokers would agree with me as well, is they all make money if you sell today. But let's say your EBITDA, all right, what you're going to get a multiple on is $1 million. Terrific. You might get a 4 multiple today. So, hey, I'm going to get a $4 million. After expenses and taxes, maybe I'm going to walk away with $2 million, 2.5. All right. That's a big number. That's great. But what if I went out and got the right capital, didn't have to make monthly payments, and grew the hell out of my business? Could I double that EBITDA in a year? And I think in most cases, the answer is always a quick yes. Without question, you could. And so if you're able to do that, now you're a 2 million EBITDA business. And now instead of getting a 4 multiple, because as you get larger, the multiples go up, you might get a 5 multiple. So think of that. Instead of getting, $4 million, you're getting $10 million. That's life-changing. And it's right there in your hands just to put one more year of work in. I don't think there's any question you could do it. Whenever I've done things like that, I literally sit down with my family, my wife, my kids. And my kids are older now, so, not as much, but when they were younger. And I would sit down and I would explain to them, look, I'm starting a business, or I'm putting a push on in this business, and here's what the goal is. And I plan to do this for, 6 months or 9 months or 12 months. And, I think it's really going to work out great, but I need you all to support me on this, because I'm going to be working, early, and I'm going to be working late, and I'm going to be working my ass off. And I want you to understand it. I'm not going to miss the school plays and the baseball games or whatever it is, but I am going to be focused on this. And I just want you all to understand it and to, support me with it. And I think doing that, it gets your whole family behind you. And even, a 7-year-old kid would say, hey, Dad, how's the business going? And it keeps you motivated and keeps you going. So that's the way I look at it. I would grow the business and get a better multiple in a year. And maybe it's 18 months. And as I told you, with us, we have a lot of our sellers that make no payments because they're planning on selling their business. They're doing exactly what I just said. They have a game plan of selling their business in 18 months to 2 years, and using our capital to grow the hell out of their business from now until then, make no payments. Now they sell their business. We just get our capital, and whatever the accrued profits are that we earned, they keep all the upside. They can't lose.
Yeah. And to build off that point, I think circling back to something that you said earlier, it sounds like this game plan of, if you have the opportunity in 18 months to double what you walk away with in an exit, and you have the funding to do it, why wouldn't you? But you were saying that aggregators are changing the space. It's something that we've talked a lot about, this idea that it's really a season of the seller. And you were saying you weren't really quite sure of what the future was going to hold for them. I just wanted to make sure it was clear what you were thinking there, that it sounds like you're saying that this is a kind of like, you really need to weigh your options here. You need to think about your opportunities with the aggregators coming in. It really might be the time to think more seriously about an exit, because we don't know what 3 or 4 years if this is going to be the same. Was that about right?
Yeah, it is. And I don't think there's a fear that it's going to change tomorrow, but there's no question in my mind, it will change. And it will change. And most likely, if you're the small player, it probably is not going to be in your best interest. So in my mind, when you have the opportunity to grow and you have a great business in front of you, you have a great, model in front of you, and you have great products that you've already developed, well, take all that knowledge, take all that ability, get the money, grow the hell out of it. And then if you cash in a year, 2 years, 3 years, you're taking the chips off the table. So, the next thing you do is going to be playing with the house money. And, you might be crazy like me and start a publishing company or an entertainment company or something else crazy. But, if you stick to your guns and what I'll guarantee you'll figure out the next business in this space and the next niche that people aren't hitting right now. And you're going to be in the middle of it. So you're going to be able to know exactly how to use your money to now double the next business and get a cash out exit on that in a shorter period of time.
That's great advice. Being able to free yourself up for the right opportunities and realize you can act when there's white space, when you might have been locked up before. No, it makes total sense.
And take the risk off the table.
Yes, and absolutely. That, and probably, both are important, but certainly being able to take that risk off the table is huge. As we said before, tumultuous. It's a good way to sum up Amazon.
Yeah.
So we've just about wrapped up the interview here. We do like to close on just a couple rapid fire questions. So I'll kick this off. What would you say is the secret sauce to securing optimal funding on Amazon?
Rapid fire. I love it. So the secret sauce to, getting optimal funding on Amazon, truthfully, I have a one-word answer. Accrueme.com. I swear to God, if you look anywhere else, look everywhere. But if you don't look there, you're missing the boat. And we made the process really, really simple. It takes no time to apply. Give it a shot. You got nothing to lose.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we'll be sure to leave that link to Accrueme and all of these resources in this call as well,
Great.
In the show notes as well too, Don. And next rapid fire question for you. So what type of tools or resources do you suggest Amazon FBA sellers use to help them grow their business? The obvious one using Accrueme, but are there any other resources that you've located or maybe masterminds or maybe even groups or networking opportunities that you've found really do help sellers kind of get them to their next stage?
It's a great one. I will tell you that I think everybody knows the technologies that are out there. You have, Jungle Scout and Helium 10 and Keepa. Another one that I've heard from so many sellers they've done so well with is a company by the name of Teikametrics. And they help you monitor your advertising, increase it, decrease it to make sure that you're going to earn the most profit possible. I have nothing to do with the company. I'm just telling you that I've come into so many sellers that absolutely just brag about how much better they've done as a result of being with Teikametrics. Mm-hmm. Then the other one, you brought up masterminds. Masterminds, we all know, going back to Think and Grow Rich with Napoleon Hill, that was one of his main premises is if you want to build a business, start a mastermind. And it's really something I've done many times in my career, and it's a great thing to do. And it's very interesting, and certainly things that will never leave your mind ever after you do it. But there are some masterminds in the Amazon world. One that we've worked with recently called Titan Network, and I think they're based out of England, and they're all over the world. But fantastic sellers, fantastic information, a great resource for their sellers. I have no idea what they charge, but I can just tell you the amount of sellers that we've talked to that really know what they're doing and, just praise the Titan Network left and right.
Yeah, we just had Athena on the podcast not too long ago. Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Teikametrics too. I talked to that whole crew as well at Prosper in Las Vegas last week, and yeah, it's funny we got to hang out with all of them as well too. So yeah, really great networking opportunity as well. Just having all of these companies that are coming together in this ecosystem and online business, and just being able to piggyback ideas and bounce other thoughts and stuff off of one another was an amazing opportunity to actually speak to everyone, not just kind of emailing back and forth, I guess.
Absolutely. And I wish I knew you guys were there because I was there as well.
Yeah, I probably went through your booth and maybe talked to some of your crew as well, too. I'm pretty networking friendly, I guess you could say. I like to talk to everybody and everyone at these types of events. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure we probably passed by each other at some point. And yeah, it was really great networking time there.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It's such a small world. Online business seems vast until you're in it. And then it's just like everyone knows each other in a really cool way.
Yeah.
So final question here. I know that you were in so many different businesses in your lifetime and you've really been an entrepreneur. It feels like your whole life, but I wanted to narrow in down on your time as a digital entrepreneur. And I was wondering what has been your funniest moment working as a digital entrepreneur?
Good question. I'm going to have to say, and I don't know if this is very funny, but I have a very firm business concept that I've used to build businesses and start businesses. And I call it start stupid. And the reason for it is you're never going to know enough when you're starting a business. You just have to jump in. If you knew everything, you would never do it because think of the Amazon world. It's too complicated. You need too much money. You got to deal with people in China and so forth. There's too many potential failure points. You just never would do it. So, the idea is to gather as much information as you can reasonably and start stupid. And that's exactly, I applied that with starting this business with Accrueme. We had a great idea. We built the model. It made sense. Well, does it really work? So we literally took our own money and went out to about a dozen sellers. And we had the conversation internally that said, me and my partner, we said, all right, we're going to give out money to these guys. We're most likely going to lose it, but we're going to learn. And, we have to be okay with that. So we went out and we gave money to these sellers and fully expecting that we would lose money. And as it turned out, I told you about that very first one. Again, we didn't have a system. We didn't have anything, but we learned an awful lot along the way. And everything's worked out well. All of our sellers did very, very well, except for one. He just didn't get off the mark. Great guy. I still am friendly with him, but it just didn't work. All the others have grown their business, double, triple, quadruple, literally tenfold. And it all came down to the theory of, just start stupid. And we put it out there and man, we learned a lot, but we learned that it also works. It works for us and it works for the sellers. Not too funny, but
I like that though. I think it's
No,
great
good.
advice. I think
yeah.
I think too many people they're just scared to jump into something big without feeling like they know anything. And no one likes to feel stupid at anything when they start. But I mean, lo and behold, you can stumble upon some pretty powerful revelations and great businesses along the way. So
absolutely.
yeah.
And we're all stupid when we start something. I don't care what it is. We don't know, as they say. And we don't know anything. And, we've learned an awful lot, but we have a lot still to learn. And it's exciting. It's really exciting. And my favorite part of this whole thing is getting to know the sellers, really, getting to know them personally and their stories. I like cheering them on. I like to try to help however I can. And it's just exciting. It's really a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, Donna, it's been so great having you on and hearing about your journey and being able to really partner with sellers when they definitely need somebody kind of standing in their corner in this crazy Amazon FBA entrepreneurial journey. So thank you for sharing all that with us. I think this is going to be really helpful to a lot of our audience.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Brandon. It was great. I enjoyed this. Great questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Wrapped up this episode and learned about sourcing Amazon funding with less risk involved, we wanted to cover a common question about buying and selling online businesses. So we have this submission. When selling an online business, often it doesn't just involve the website, but other stuff like SOPs and supporting web assets like social media accounts, etc. Does Empire Flippers take those things into consideration when valuing and selling? So the short answer to this is yes. Although some things affect your valuation more than others. So, social media following, that might affect your valuation some if you can prove that it really does drive traffic and value and sales to the business. But in most cases, it doesn't really affect your valuation. Other things like SOPs won't necessarily affect your valuation, but it does affect how attractive your business is to buyers. And that's huge. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they get really stuck with all the small things that might affect their valuation and that number that they go to sell for, but they often tend to forget that being attractive to buyers is actually one of the most valuable things that you could bring to the table. So in order to be more attractive to buyers, for example, you want to have things like SOPs because that means you can basically buy a business and run it right out the gate because you already have all the operations laid out for the buyer. So things like that can actually prove a lot of value without necessarily being a part of the valuation. So long story short, we do take those things into consideration. Some things impact the valuation more than others, but we do take a holistic approach when coming up with a valuation. All right, everyone, that wraps up this week's episode of the Opportunity Podcast. We hope you've gained some valuable insight on the opportunities that digital acquisitions offer. Click the link in the description or visit empireflippers.com/marketplace to learn more about listings currently live on our platform. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a review and subscribe to this podcast for more great content that'll be released soon. Thanks for tuning in to the Opportunity Podcast. We're looking forward to having you back next week to hear from your fellow entrepreneurs and online experts.